Hi, so today we're going to be going over dyslexia. So, some common facts about dyslexia are that 8.5 million students, approximately in that range, have dyslexia in the United States. Now, dyslexia is can be passed through genetics. So, if both of your parents have it, or just one parent has it, or like great grandparent, grandparent, something like that has it, there's a good chance that you will have it as well. Though that does not mean to the same extent or to the same severity. So if like the person in your genetic line that has it is really severe, you might not have it as severe, or you might have it more severe. It just depends on your case. So it does not tie in to the severity, only to the genetic markers for it. Dyslexia does run in all languages. It can be prevalent in some languages over others. That's due to the formatting and use of the language. So, like English is one of those languages where it's kind of hard to spot a little because of the way that the language is set up. So, formatting, grammar, stuff like that can play a big part in it. Students with dyslexia, they don't have any issues with languages that they can hear. It's only with reading. 1 in 5 students are based out of language-based learning disability. So it's around 1.5 is what they're predicting right now. Dyslexia affects both females and males the same amount, as well as any ethnicity. It doesn't change based on the ethnicity that you are or the gender. It affects you the same amount of the likelihood that you are to have it. In minority and high poverty schools, 70 to 80% of students have inadequate reading skills. That might be due to dyslexia, it might be due to the school itself. Just 70 to 80% of those students do have issues with comprehending, reading, stuff like that. So 80% of students have an IEP, and 85% of those have dyslexia. So that ties into the inadequate reading skills from the point above. So that while 80% of them have an IEP, 85% of them might have dyslexia, probably have dyslexia. Warning signs brought to you by the Mayo Clinic for that are they're late talking, they learn new words slowly. So if they're having trouble formulating and understanding words slower than an average student, there's a chance they don't have it. They have problems forming words correctly. They have problems remembering names, colors, and letters. Difficulty learning nursery rhymes or rhyming games. So like patty cake, stuff like that. If it is stuff like that, they might have a tendency to learn it later, or it's harder for them to learn it. They are reading below their age level. They have difficulties processing and understanding what is heard. They have problems finding the right words to problems. They have difficulty remembering sequences, and they have difficulty spelling. Now, difficulty spelling is the biggest marker for dyslexia. Uh, yeah, so, from the textbooks including Students with Special Needs, A Practical Guide for Classroom Teachers, I pulled the quote of students with learning and behavioral disabilities often have problems comprehending narrative text in the elementary grades and informal text and advanced literature in the upper grades. Although these difficulties result in part from poor decoding skills, they may also occur because they lack background and vocabulary knowledge, as well as strategies for identifying the key elements of stories and content areas. So what this means is they have the issues finding the information within it. So, like a good example would be they can read it, but they don't comprehend what's going on. They aren't able to fully realize what they're reading, so that they aren't able to take away all of the key features of the story. So, if you had them read all the way through it and then ask them at the end of the story key critical questions containing the stories, they would have some areas of issue explaining back to you what they learned. And then key areas of testing for dyslexia are in language, phonological awareness, rapid naming and word fluency, reading comprehension, spelling, and writing. Now, all of these are the major areas impacted by dyslexia. Of course, language, obviously. Phonological awareness and rapid naming and word fluency both pertain to the disorder itself, and with that makes it harder for the students to uh, first understand the word they're reading, and then beyond that, because they have to comprehend each word that they're reading, it's harder for them to comprehend everything that they're reading at once. So they, because if you're having to decipher what each word is, being able to understand the full story is going to be a nightmare for the student. And then on top of that, spelling and writing are going to be difficult because if they're mixed up, it's going to be hard for them to be able to both write and read. So they're going to have difficulties in those arenas. So for that, being able to test them on those are some of the key critical areas of testing to make sure that the student themselves has dyslexia or not, or making sure that they have another learning disability that they will need uh, help addressing, and making sure that they get the key critical uh, uh, information and help that they need to be able to overcome these challenges. Now, some websites to check out for more resources pertaining to this are Reading Rockets Dyslexia, dyslexia.org, the Mayo Clinic, the Dyslexia Center of Utah, and childmind.org. These are all really great resources to be able to look into and understand what dyslexia is, how it pertains to a student, things that you can do to better understand the student and give them the resources that they need to be able to participate and actively be in your class, to be able to participate and just be themselves, to be quite honest, because if a student is having issues comprehending what we're talking about, they're not going to be able to participate in the class, they're not going to be able to understand what's going on, and so they're able to comprehend what we're doing later on is going to be lower than any other student. So it's important that we look at these resources and be able to understand the needs that these students have so that they can be active participants in the classroom. Tools that are useful to support kids with dyslexia are multisensory instruction and decoding skills. So breaking down words like fascination, for example, fascination, and decoding skills, stuff like that, so that we can break down the words, help them better understand it, and then they're able to put it together and have an easier time comprehending what we're reading. Repetition and review of skills, so reading the same thing over a couple times and reviewing, what we're going over is critical to make sure that they're able to participate in the class and comprehend and remember what we're talking about. The intensity of intervention. So when we intervene and help the students, it's critical the amount of time that we do it as well as how often we do it. Because if you're doing it for long sessions at long intervals, then they're not really getting the help. You want long sessions at short intervals so that way they get the help that they need with reading and writing so that they can be active participants in the classroom. Small group and individual instruction are important in that small groups are able to help them decipher what we're reading as well as participate in the classroom, first and foremost, so that way it takes some of the burden off of them for reading and writing. And if they're able to talk to students, as I said earlier, the dyslexia doesn't mess with their auditory skills. It's only their reading. So for them to be able to auditory listen to what is going on, they're going to have an easier time comprehending that than if they're having to read it or write it. And the same goes for their individual instruction. If they're able to have an auditory example instead of a reading example, they'll be able to comprehend it easier and quicker than if they had to, read it or write it. Teaching decoding words. So, bad example off the top of my head is alcoholic. So like alcohol, alco for alcohol, and lick for like person, stuff like that. I know that's a terrible example. I'm not an LA major or anything like that, but words that they're able to decode and see inside like a sentence so that they can understand what they're seeing quicker than if they have to decipher the entire word and decode it, because that'll take longer. Sight words, words that they're able to see really quickly, understand what they are, move by them to understand and decode the harder words that hopefully they'll be able to decode easier with the decoding words. Uh, Teaching comprehension strategies that the students are able to use to, comprehend what we're teaching them, be able to interact with the class, know what we're talking about, and then participate as we hope they can. Uh, Reading programs have also been shown to help with dyslexia. There are a couple of them out there. They're really important because reading programs, if we're getting them to read continually, hopefully it might help. But if they're actively in reading programs, it gives them more training and stuff like that. So if we're using the other lists of tools that we have, hopefully they'll be able to read quicker and comprehend more than they are without these tools. Now, what is dyslexia? So the video is from TED Ed. So it's a TED Talk, and it talks about the issues that are going on with people with dyslexia. I'm just going to hold it here for like a minute, but some of the stuff they go over is because I know in the common myth among people about dyslexia is that like if you have the letter B, it swaps into a D, or if you have the word saw, it transforms into was. Now that's not exactly what dyslexia is. They see the same letters, they see the same symbols. The order is mixed up. Now, info from the video, the trouble isn't the same, but manipulating the language. So making sure that they're able to manipulate it into the right words on first try is important. Students with dyslexia need to break the words apart to understand it. So like a word for fascination, fascination. If you're able to break the word apart, let them focus on each individual part and then bring it back together to understand the whole word. Very important for them to be able to do that, and makes it so that they're better able to understand it than if they try to break apart and decipher a whole word all at once. And that's important because if they're able to deal with small bite-sized chunks, they're able to understand it easier than if you're taking like a whole word and trying to decipher it all at once. So dyslexia is caused because the left half of the brain, the left lobe, deals with language, while the right half deals with spatial thoughts. So, like creativity, writing, or creativity, stuff like that is on the right. Language, reading, writing, stuff pertaining to that is on the left. So, students with dyslexia and people with dyslexia deal with the front right lobe more than they do the left lobe. So, they're trying to decipher through the part of the brain that uses the more creative idea. And so because of that, they're not able to harness as much power from the left. So while they're able to see it and read it, it's mixed up. And because of that, that's what dyslexia is caused by. So at the very end, if you want to look at any of the resources I have, here's all the resources. But students with dyslexia do need a lot of tools and help to be able to participate in the class. And it's important that we give them these tools and the process and time to be able to understand and power through these, as well as instructions, comprehension skills, all that stuff, so that they can be as active students as the rest of the class.